I didn't come back for the house. That's what I told myself on the flight. 11 years is long enough to turn a childhood home into a rumor. I had built something steady in another city, an apartment with neutral walls, a job that paid on time, friends who didn't know the old versions of me. When Mom called to say Grandpa was gone, I booked the ticket the same night. It felt procedural, necessary. Grief was there, but it sat quietly beside something older. The house looked smaller when the cab dropped me off. Same chipped paint near the porch light. Same oak tree leaning slightly left like it had opinions. Mom opened the door. For half a second, we just looked at each other. She aged in the way people do when they've been bracing for years. Her mouth moved to say my name. Then he stepped in front of her. I had met her new husband once, briefly, before I left town. Back then he'd been polite in that overly firm way, too much eye contact, too much hand on the shoulder. Now he didn't bother with politeness. "You're not staying here," he said. I thought he was joking. The words didn't register until his fist did. It wasn't cinematic, no dramatic fall. Just a sharp crack against my cheekbone that made the world tilt for a second. The doorframe caught me before I lost my balance. "This isn't your house anymore," he said, steady and certain. Mom didn't scream. She didn't intervene, she just stood behind him, hands pressed together like she was holding something fragile and invisible. I tasted copper and looked past him into the hallway. Same wallpaper, same mirror. Grandpa used to check his hat before church. "I'm here for the funeral," I said. My voice surprised me. Calm. Almost detached. "You can get a hotel." The door closed. For a few minutes I stood on the porch, listening to the lock slide into place. The humiliation hit before the pain did. Not because he'd punched me, but because he'd decided I didn't belong and assumed that was enough. I could have left. Part of me wanted to. Book a room. Attend the service. Fly back to my controlled, quiet life and let the house dissolve into memory. But as I walked back toward the curb, I remembered Grandpa at the kitchen table 3 years before I left town. He'd pushed an envelope toward me without ceremony. "Keep this somewhere safe," he'd said. I'd laughed. "What is it?" "Just paperwork." I didn't open it until months later, already in another city. The original deed. My name typed neatly where his used to be. Dated years before Mom remarried. He hadn't made a speech about it, no dramatic declaration. Just a quiet transfer, filed properly. I had kept it. That night, in a hotel room that smelled faintly of bleach, I laid the document on the desk and called a lawyer I'd worked with once on a contract dispute. His practice included estate law. He answered on the second ring. I explained everything without raising my voice. There was a pause. Paper rustling on his end. "If that deed was properly recorded," he said, "the house is legally yours." It was. "Then you don't need to argue. You need to notify." The funeral came first. I stood in the second row. Mom didn't sit beside me. Her husband kept his distance, jaw tight, like he expected me to cause a scene. I didn't. I listened to people talk about Grandpa's steadiness, his practicality, the way he fixed things quietly instead of announcing them. When the service ended, my mother approached me near the parking lot. "You shouldn't have come back like this," she said softly. "Like what?" "With expectations." I almost told her I had none. But that wasn't true. I expected basic decency. I expected not to be struck on my own porch. Instead I said, "I came because he was my grandfather." Her eyes flicked toward her husband. She looked tired. Smaller than I remembered. 2 days later, the process server knocked on the front door. I was standing across the street when it happened. Not hiding, just observing. The uniform was unmistakable. Clipboard. Official envelope. Her husband opened the door with the same rigid posture he'd had when he hit me. "Are you Mr. Carter?" the server asked.
"Yes."
"You've been served." He took the envelope reflexively. Confusion replaced certainty in less than a second. He scanned the first page, then the second. His shoulders shifted, not collapsing, just recalibrating. Authority doesn't shout, it hands you paper. I crossed the street slowly. He looked up as I reached the walkway. For the first time, there was no aggression in his face. Just calculation. "You think you can just—" he started. "It's already done," I said. Mom appeared behind him again. This time her eyes were on me. "What is this?" she asked. "The deed Grandpa transferred to me," I said, "years ago. It was recorded properly." Silence settled between us. Not dramatic, just heavy. "You're going to throw us out?" she asked. There it was, the question beneath everything. I had that power now, legally clean, enforceable. I could have given them 30 days. The law would back me. The punch would have justified it in the eyes of anyone listening. But standing there, looking at the house that raised me and fractured me, I realized eviction wouldn't restore anything. It would only confirm that power is something you swing. "I'm not throwing you out," I said. "Not today." Her husband exhaled, almost imperceptibly. "But this is my house," I continued. "Legally. If you stay, it's under a written agreement. Rent, terms, boundaries." He opened his mouth to object, then closed it. Paper has a way of silencing pride. Mom nodded slowly, like she understood something she hadn't before. That evening, I walked through the house alone for the first time in over a decade. The air felt different, not warmer, not healed. Just acknowledged. Ownership didn't erase the punch. It didn't undo years of distance. It didn't make my mother braver. But it shifted something inside me. For years, I had defined home as the place that rejected me, as something conditional, revocable. Now it was a matter of record. I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in it, just steadiness. Grandpa had never been loud about protecting what mattered. He just made sure it was done properly. And so did I.